One of the topics that we have seen come up a lot on our YouTube channel, especially whenever we're talking about rifles or AR pistol platforms or things like that, seems to be people throwing out the comment that responding to a shooting is going to definitely get you killed by law enforcement or another bystander. And I think that this is a topic that either we fall into two camps, and I want to get Phil's input. So we just did another video with Phill where we talked about creating a solid training plan. And this, in my mind, kind of couples that. It kind of piggybacks off of that a little bit. And I think in my personal opinion, you kind of fall into one of two camps. Either we way overthink this and it's creating this mental roadblock where we're just being unrealistic about what could happen, or we're not thinking about it enough. And I think that this is a topic that people should be considering because, again, I haven't been there, done that. I haven't responded to a mass shooting. I've never, at this point in my life, drawn a firearm to defend my life. So I can't talk to you guys about this is exactly what I did in this scenario. So just a disclaimer here, we're navigating this concept and just having a short conversation to give you guys some stuff to think about. This isn't us saying do these steps and replicate this thing. I want to be very careful there because I don't think that it would be responsible to tell people responding and defending your life is free of all risks. I think that one of the things that I've decided in my life, and it's a decision you have to make for yours, is at what point am I willing to risk myself to defend another person? And that could be myself, that could be my family, but at what point am I willing to cross that threshold and say, this is important enough that I know that there might be consequences with my safety, being mistaken for a shooter, being engaged upon by another responsible citizen. You can just imagine the chaos of an event like that. So Phill, one of the things that I wanted to do here is just give people some intel. I mean, you have a background of dealing with some hectic calls and things like that and understanding how information falls apart. But I want to take people that are all the way over here saying, oh, you respond with a pistol, you respond with a rifle, you will be shot. And I want to take the people over here that are saying, nothing will happen to me. And I'd like to figure out that middle and say, is there something that we can do as citizens? Because I, again, think that our communities are safer by having people that can flip a switch and deal with a situation versus having to wait 5-6 minutes for law enforcement to respond. We're not necessarily telling people exactly when to respond or whatever, but do you have some input or experience that could potentially help people?
Yeah, I think that all of the above really to what you're asking. And the biggest problem is that there's such a lack of information in situations like this on all sides. It's chaotic. You used the word chaos, and it's true. So being involved in incidents like this where you're dispatched to a shooting, dispatched to, whether it's a mass shooting or just a singular act of violence, the information that comes out, the information that's pushed to law enforcement is very rarely reliable. It's often conflicting, it's confusing, and all of that information that gets presented to cops as they respond to these types of calls, it's very difficult for you to control that information. You don't know what they're being told, which is why you see such a broad spectrum in the opinions of how to handle this. From if you intervene, you're a dead man because the responding officer is just going to come and they're going to gun you down. No questions asked, they're going to shoot on sight. And there are examples where that has happened, and there are examples where the information those officers received, that was actually the correct tactical decision for them. It ultimately ended up being wrong, but at the time, given their information that they had, that was the right play for them. And then there are times where they are actually given good information, and you see instances where they can respond more correctly quicker. So there's a big spread in there, and you can't control that. So what I tell people, this is really a mindset thing. Like you talked about, deciding what I'm going to do before I get into this helps me be better equipped for when it occurs. And to me, this is a mindset game. It's thinking about these actions beforehand and then applying them in an actual incident. And the biggest thing is I need to remove myself as any perception of a threat. And the most common way that I'm viewed as a threat is possession of a weapon. So if that's a pistol, if that's a rifle, no matter what it is, there's simple things I can do, like reholstering, putting the rifle on the ground, having that gun not in my hand. We make a lot of mistakes. We've been preconditioned by so much of our lives in Hollywood and on TV that we get involved in this shooting and like the hero, you know, the cowboy in white's gonna stand over and
over the villain.
Well, I mean, we're gonna deliver the Bruce Willis one-liner that I just smoked this dude. And it's just realistic. It's unrealistic. And that coupled with the fact that a lot of people get into this is a super chaotic, this is a super emotionally and physiologically charged event. Our brains just kind of overprocess and what do I do now? I just shot this dude. Like, what now? And there's that pause and the timing of when that occurs. But it becomes a situation where I want to get as a low threatening posture, and by removing that weapon from the equation, that's honestly the biggest thing. If I can't remove myself from the situation, which is my first step, and we can talk about that, getting myself completely away, understanding I don't have to stay right there. That's not my job. I don't have to arrest them. You know, the phrase in the military and law enforcement is, you catch them, you clean them. Meaning if I'm involved in the shooting, I'm responsible to, as a cop, I'm responsible to arrest, control, and render aid. I have to do that. As a private citizen, if I use force against, again, a singular source of violence or a mass shooter or something like that, I have no obligation, legally, morally, ethically, I have no obligation to stay there. I can remove myself to a place of complete safety, take out any chance that I'm a secondary victim of that event.
And I think that's what a lot of people get really stuck on. And now, granted, I think most of the comments that we get on our YouTube channel, and it's really anytime we're talking about a rifle, you guys have seen our videos, and we're saying, in my opinion, this is me speaking for me, I like that the AR-15 has proliferated the masses. I think it's awesome that people want to go get a modern fighting rifle and learn how to use it. The reality is most of us won't use it in a defensive situation. People think we're talking about fear and being paranoid. The reality is we live in a pretty safe time. Now, we did see what happens in cities during chaos, during societal meltdown. And ironically, out of some of those situations, we also saw instances where people defended themselves with rifles, right or wrong, and walked right to police and didn't get shot. And so I think that there's a reality here that in my mind I've accepted. If, say I'm in a shopping mall or something, and even if I just respond with a concealed pistol, I've accepted the fact that in the moment of me drawing that pistol, someone may see that and may say, holy cow, that dude's about to shoot somebody. And I understand and I've accepted that as a person who I feel called to be better trained to be able to do that, that is a risk that I'm accepting. But it's also where I've played these scenarios in my mind. And again, I don't know how far that goes with the actual application. I've never had to defend myself in a shooting. But I do think that this is a topic that some of the people that have raised the question are genuinely curious. Maybe a new gun owner saying, you know, these are some things that I see and I'm concerned about.
Yeah. Yeah, the most common way that a lot of people train this or mentally think about it is, if I simply follow the commands of responding law enforcement, I'll be okay. The unfortunate truth is that's not always going to be the case. I mean, police officers are receiving a variety of information on the way into these calls. They may be receiving information, like you said, another person sees you draw that gun and you're lawfully and righteously shooting someone in defense of self or defense of others. That person over on the other side of the mall doesn't know that. They see a dude in a pair of blue jeans and a gray t-shirt draw and shoot another human being. And that's exactly what they're going to tell 911. So now that dispatch gets out of, you know, white male with a beard, gray t-shirt, blue jeans, armed with a handgun. So if the responding officer gets there and sees a white male with a beard, gray t-shirt, and blue jeans, still armed with a handgun,
holding a gun at
standing
somebody,
over another human being, your chances of having a problem skyrocket. So there's just no need for that. There's simple steps that you can take. You can remove yourself from the situation, and if you can't remove yourself from the situation, remove the weapon from the situation. So take that out of visibility. And there's never a case, I tell people, when people say, well, what if the bad guy's still rolling around? What if he's still crawling? What if he's still active? Well, if he's still active and you've intervened, right? If you still are defending others, your job isn't finished. And these events happen quickly. The chance of you being, listen, this isn't a zero risk game.
Right.
So could
and
it
I
be?
I don't want to mince that either,
Yeah,
and pretend like this is.
It could happen, and this has happened. It could happen that another armed citizen or responding police officer arrives simultaneous to you taking action, and mistake of intent occurs. That can happen, but more common is that initial fight is over in a couple of seconds. You don't need to stay in the area. You don't need to watch them and hold them and cover them. And if you feel like you do, that threat's still active and valid, and you need to treat it as such. You can typically remove yourself. You have time to put the gun back in the holster if you're carrying concealed. You have time to put the gun on the ground. take a step away from it. If you pulled your rifle, I can take that rifle off my sling, set it on the ground, take one step away. If that dude's Jason Voorhees and he back up and he's ready to fight again, so he lays down, he magically reanimates, you know, like that idiot Chipman said, right, the zombies, this dude's a real zombie and I got to shoot him in the head now, right? It's one step, pick the gun up, and I'm back in the fight. Or
potentially, you know, like I like to think about the bag gun video that we just recently did, where we talked about a couple different ways that we keep rifles and backpacks in our vehicles and we have access to them. That caused a lot of these kind of comments. And that's where I also think a lot of people forget that there may be a scenario where that rifle's a primary. Oftentimes for us, our pistols are primaries, but I still have a concealed pistol too. So if I had to put that rifle back in a backpack, zip that backpack up, make it disappeared, I still have access to an immediate pistol or a rifle or something like that.
Yeah, and just taking the weapon, like I said, removal of self, and in situations where I cannot. All right, removal of the weapon or the visibility of that weapon is going to greatly enhance your safety, both from other armed citizens and from responding law enforcement. Could you still get shot? Sure. Is it likely now where if that responding officer comes in and gives you commands, even if you don't understand the commands or you're contradictory to what those commands are given, you're in a much safer position? And again, if I remove myself, we talk about removing and communicating. So if I remove myself from that immediate scene, and I communicate through 911, and I'm not here to give legal advice, that's for attorneys, that's for talented men and women there to give you legal advice, but if I remove myself from the scene, if I make contact to 911, and I remove myself to a place of safety, my preferred area that I tell people to go is start moving towards a hospital. So I'm going to go to a hospital. I'm going to go to seek treatment. Even if I'm uninjured, I don't have to be shot, stabbed, wounded in any way. I'm heading to a hospital. An alternate to that would be I'm heading to the police department. What I don't want to do, you know, it's not a joke, it's kind of sick, but I don't want to Ted Kennedy. I don't want to get in a shooting, go home, wake up the next morning, and then call in and be like, hey, by the way, I shot a guy at the mall last night.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea. But if I remove myself and communicate immediately, I take away that mistaken identity and I add layers to my safety, and I add buffers of time and distance between the threat and myself.
Yeah. Guys, this is a topic that I don't think that one video is going to necessarily give you all the info that you need. And on top of that, every state is different based on the laws that you can and can't, how you can and can't respond to situations, I should say. It's very, very complex. But what I personally believe is that this is a conversation you need to have with yourself, and you need to be diving into and asking these questions and formulating some sort of a plan, so that in the event that you do respond, you have something to fall back on and you're not just winging this. I do think that there's validity in the comments that people have been giving, or sending to us, I should say, asking us about, hey, does this make you a target? But I definitely think that there's an area here in the middle that we can recognize that as citizens, we do have a right to defend our life. Nobody can take that right away from us and say, you can't defend your life because of this risk. But then we have to treat this seriously and kind of navigate this topic. So the last question that I wanted to just kind of throw at you real quick before we wrap up, knowing that there's risks to responding in a life or death situation, do you think that those risks justify some people not taking action at all, or saying, okay, well, I know I might get shot, so I'm just not even going to carry a gun, I'm not going to do anything? How do you kind of navigate that? Because I know there's some people on the fence saying, I don't want to get shot by I don't want to be mistaken as a bad guy, so I'm not going to carry a gun.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of theoretical talk there. To me, that's all about personal choice. That's an individual personal discussion, or an individual personal decision that only you can make. And you can make that decision beforehand in a mindset, in a what if, in a mental rehearsal kind of manner. What you're going to do, there's a lot of people, maybe a little bit lesser example to this, is there's a lot of people that'll say, if I pull up in a car accident, you know, for years since we've been kids, the rule of thumb is, oh, don't touch them, and I won't intercede and I won't do that. And there are hard hearts that say, well, you know, I'm not getting sued, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. It's a lot different when you're standing there looking at someone who's bleeding to death and you have the understanding, the tools, and the means to help them. It's a lot different seeing it and having it happen in person. So it's okay to think about this beforehand. It's an individual decision, but also be flexible enough with yourself mentally and emotionally and understand you may choose a different course of action given the stimulus you have.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, I hope this was at least a little bit helpful to you. And this is a topic, honestly, I plan to dive into in the future as well. I mean, we'll see examples of this. There's plenty of examples on both sides of the fence, people that stopped mass shootings with even rifles openly, engaged shooters, stopped them, and they interacted with police and didn't die. And then there's the situations where it went south really bad, and I think that maybe eventually we can kind of dive into some of those scenarios and dissect them a little bit. But at the same time, I just want to encourage all of you guys to make a decision for yourself. If you decide that you are a concealed carrier, take it seriously. And that's what we are about here at TA Targets, is don't just be somebody who takes a gun, puts it in their safe, says I'm good to go. I want to see you guys getting out, getting trained, having mental exercises where we're thinking about this stuff and not just throwing the dice and saying, I think I might just do this one thing when the time, you know, when it counts the most. Be thinking about these situations. You can always talk to attorneys. There's plenty of firearms attorneys out there who are putting out good information. You can look up statistics, do some studying, and then also tap into other resources. Guys, leave us a comment in the comment section. Phil, I appreciate you jumping into another video with us. Catch you guys in the next one.